This looks like a torture device.
Um, I'll send you another picture of it, not attached, and then you can see it a bit better from this angle. And then you can describe to the people what we're looking at, and then I'll tell you what it is. It does look like a torture device.
So it's like it's a Palm Pilot attached to metal rigging with a tattoo machine ba- attached between like two moving parts, which obviously oscillate on like an X and Y axis in order to move. And there's like what looks like a very rudimentary like PCB board. But in the picture that Matt has sent me, in order to stretch the skin, and when you open this online, you don't see this. You have to like scroll down in the image. There's like 8 clothes pegs just attached to the back of the person's arm.
Yeah, the skin is being stretched with clothes pegs. So this is from 2002.
Okay.
So this is over 20 years ago. And it's the project of an Austrian like robotics artist whose name is Nicholas or Nicky Passath. It gets called KURT, K-U-R-T, which is some kind of acronym. But yeah, he was a kind of robotics like media tech student in around this time in 2000, 2001, 2002. And actually, so talking about, things I expected when I was growing up, like this was when I was doing my master's degree in the body. And it's this time when there's loads of interest in the sort of technologization of the body, theorization of the body. It's sort of in the period when Judith Butler's written Gender Trouble. There's lots of guy called Kevin Warwick at the University of Reading, where I was studying at the time, was like putting chips in his nervous system, and RFID things were being implanted in people's arms. And Stellark, the Australian Cypriot artist, was kind of hooking his body up to the internet late 90s, early 2000s. So this is really of its time, and it really was the kind of body hacking transhumanist moment in culture. And I think it's funny because you still see, I mean, the headlines about Black Dot, there's another project in the intervening period I want to talk about as well, do say this is the first time this has ever been done. But like, this guy was hooking up a freaking Palm Pilot to a single coil machine like 20 years ago. It doesn't, looking at the photos of the tattoos it does, they're not very good.
Like, I can't imagine they would be.
No, it's pretty brutal. It's pretty it is pretty fucking brutal. But it is, the basic idea is right there. I mean, in fact, the idea Pathrath says for this, let me send you this photograph or this image. So the idea for this comes, Pathrath said, from a like 19th century medical patent, which was basically to try and take people's pulse. So it's called a sphygmograph. By this like scientist called Mari, and the idea was that you'd like strap a kind of like movable pen apparatus to your arm where your pulse was, and it would kind of draw you what we now look like an ECG. So he's modeled
it operates essentially as rather than an actuator coming from the device, it's using the movement of the pulse in the skin as an actuator to move the pen to mark the tracing paper.
Yeah, so it's like blood pressure or heartbeat, like the basic layout of it is pretty similar. I mean, I don't know what you do with this device if you wanted a tattoo with Pathrath, if you want a tattoo anywhere other than on your arm. Like the addition of the clothes pegs just makes it so analog and so ridiculous.
Yeah, it's so interesting because like it's like we've talked about before, that the mechanical mechanisms of tattooing aren't that complicated. It's a needle with pigment suspended in a solution. That's it. And like, I'm not surprised that rather than coming up with some like big brained, algorithmically driven thing, it's like pulling from a device from the 1860s designed to take your pulse.
Yeah. Yeah, and it's so kind of, it does also show though, really, like the basic technology underneath this, right, of underneath Pathras device is a computer, a rudimentary one by modern standards, but a computer that has pictures on it, an output that moves a plotter arm, and plotters, of course, were the devices that we use for turning computer things into images before printers were invented, and they are just basically robot arms that move pens. Right, that technology goes back, to the basic Draftsman, because the analog versions of those were used by draftsmen to enlarge drawings. So you'd set up, your pen, another pen, and it would mimic your movements. Computers were using plotters back into the 1960s, and so for all of the talk about black dot and revolutionary technology, like the basic technology is a robot arm that moves a pen, and a computer here, in this case, that turns, that has the image, that turns it into movements of the image. Like the basic underlying technology is really, really fundamental to drawing, let alone to computer drawing.
And I think as well, it's important to point out that like this machine, the Kurt, exists more of a kind of idea of this kind of transhumanist performance art than it does of like, this is about tattooing.
Yeah, he did it as an art piece, right? So that's also probably worth saying. He doesn't. Thanks for pointing that out. This isn't something that he thought would be a commercial product for tattooing. It was designed as an art piece to meditate, to pose questions about the relationships between human creativity and human creativity and the machine. I mean, the things that we'll come to talk about with this thing anyway, right? Like a lot of this issue is not about commercial reality of tattooing. It's about the sort of philosophical questions that it poses.
Mm-hmm. And like it kind of is this, I suppose, meditation between like automatic drawing, which is obviously like a big part of like the Dadaist and Surrealist movements, and how technology and the machine and consciousness and creativity, how that can be applied to that. But like it does kind of remind me a little bit of, remember Can't Help Myself, the installation in the Guggenheim. It's like when you have this like kind of algorithmically driven creativity, and it's different. The Can't Help Myself is obviously a robot that's designed to push away liquid, and over time the machine corroded and the algorithm gets corrupted, and it's a statement about something more. This is kind of like, it's more about like the outcome of the tattoo and the statement about it than the actual tattooing.
Yeah, I teach a whole like term-long module on like histories of new media art, and so much of like new media art, particularly into the like post-war period when we've got computers being a bigger part of the popular consciousness, is exactly that question about about the death of human creativity, about the whether machines can be creative at all of this relationship, and these conversations we're still having today in tattooing about AI, about Procreate, all of these things, about stock images. All of these things are things that fine artists have been experimenting with since the 50s.